To sort through here, Jonathan. Let's first of all talk about the overall order, and obviously there are going to be a lot of challenges and a lot are going to succeed. But let's first of all talk about the religious test, and then also talk about, was it the 1965 Act that said you can't discriminate against an immigrant based on their country of origin, right?
Right. I mean, the thing that you have to start with is putting aside the merits of this, and there's plenty of reasons to object. I don't think that this was a good idea. I think it was a terrible mistake. Right. But legally, that doesn't factor into the question is into the dynamic here. The question is, does the president have authority to restrict entry at the border? And president's power is at its zenith at the border. The courts have historically given great deference to the president. He has the advantage here. Putting aside all these objections, historically presidents have been allowed to do very similar things. In fact, President Obama just last year told the Supreme Court, courts should not second-guess presidents on immigration and national security questions.
And the president himself had the White House said had a ban in Iraq. When was that?
For 2011.
2011, for 6 months. So will the Trump administration use that as...
They have a lot to use. People, I think, have been underestimating the precedent here that can be marshaled by the Trump administration. He has the advantage on the law because the Supreme Court has recognized this type of plenary authority in a president to control these borders. And the court will not view this as a Muslim ban. At least I don't expect them to.
Well, and again, if you have 7 of 50 Muslim majority, I do think, and I've thought from the beginning, they don't have a winning legal case there. What about, though, the nation of origin, though? You can't discriminate against immigrants. I think it was, what was it? LBJ signed it in '65, I think. Yeah. Is there a possible win there?
That certainly gives you some good groundwork to make a challenge, but is it determinative? Will it ultimately overcome a president's inherent authority? Probably not. Presidents historically have said that these regions or these areas are matters of concern. The president here is saying, I want to freeze refugee entries until we can have a better vetting process. What you're asking a federal judge to do is to substitute his or her judgment for a president saying it's a national security matter.
Won't do that, will they?
They will not.
Is it a rational standard if there's a rational reason?
The standard is very, very low. When you take a look at, there was a case in the 70s in which a Marxist was kept from coming into the country. In my view, it was a terrible decision. He was being kept out because he didn't like his views. The Supreme Court still upheld that decision and established, while it did establish that the courts could review these types of questions, the standard was very, very low as to whether the president could state an articulable or bona fide reason. He has. You can disagree with it. But he has done that.
So it sounds like your opinion right now is that the courts will uphold the overall order.
I think the odds are in his favor, but I also think people need to argue against what is there, not what is more easy to attack. You can't. The ACLU has said in the filings this is a Muslim ban, and that's a very that would be a great thing to challenge. It's not this thing. This is not a Muslim ban. A court is not going to read into it that this is a religious test because it excludes most of these other countries. Right. So there's plenty of reasons to object to this order without creating something it's not.
By the way, and I didn't want to even get in front of that train this weekend because hashtag Muslim ban was, well, just about everybody was doing it. But I was just thinking the courts will not be persuaded by this hashtag. Legally it cannot be defined that way.
Well, that's the problem, is when you look at this thing legally, it's a vastly different creature from what people are describing outside. And that's dangerous because people are assuming this is one thing and arguing against it as that thing, when a court is going to view this as something very different. What a court's going to view is that a president has suspended entries with some, not the majority of Muslim countries. And a judge is not going to get ahead of her skis on this. She's not going to look at this and say, I don't think the president's right on this. Judges tend not to do that.
I wonder, though, the president did make some comments where he talked about prioritizing Christians ahead of other religions. I wonder how the courts might view that.
There were actually 2 statements in a close case. There was that statement, which, of course, sounds like a religious test to me. And then there was Rudy Giuliani saying, well, we tried to get the best Muslim ban we could.
Well, you could almost hear the Justice Department lawyers go into fetal positions when this happened. And it's like, really? This is really what we need right now is for you to say he wanted a Muslim ban?
Well, that's a bigger question that we need to get to in terms of the
We'll get to
chaos.
that.
We wanna
Let's
get Mark Halperin